Hey guys, this is Nick bringing you a brand new deck profile for the channel. This deck is going to be extremely casual, just something you can bring to your locals or have fun messing around with your friends. And this deck is Springans and Suship, or Gunkan, as it was translated to the TCG. I've looked at a few Spriggans deck profiles across YouTube and other outlets, and I've noticed that people are either playing pure builds, or if they are combining it with another archetype, they're combining it with something like Time Thief, for example. Now, there's nothing wrong with those particular builds. However, Suship was an archetype that was revealed by Konami a few months ago, and it was something that I thought was just really hilarious. And the deck, ironically, does play fire monsters, just like Spriggans do, and their boss monsters are Xyz ships, kind of similar to what Spriggans like to do with their boss monster you see here. So I decided to combine the two together just to kind of see more of like a meme. However, after playtesting on Edo Pro with the deck, it's actually not that bad. Spriggans is an archetype that can kind of cheat out their boss monsters from their extra deck without needing a normal summon. So you can substitute the normal summon in Spriggans with something else, for example, like the Gunkan Suship Shari that you see here, which is this Suship vanilla monster. And you can make some pretty interesting boards with these two themes combined into one, actually. So let's go ahead and start off with the deck profile. Again, I do want to warn you guys that this is extremely casual. In no way is this considered a competitive or meta-relevant deck of any kind. It's just something that I wanted to test initially on Edo Pro, and it turned out to be pretty cool. So I decided to make a deck out of it. And the cool thing is that a lot of these cards come in the common rarity, so it's extremely budget if you do want to build it. Honestly, I think the entire deck, sleeves included, I ended up spending less than $100. So with that being said, let's dive into what the Spriggans are and how they work. So we're going to start off with the main deck, of course. We are playing one Spriggans Pedor. We are going to be playing triple Spriggans Rocky. We are playing triple Spriggans Brothers. Hopefully we can fit all this in the camera. And we are also going to be playing... Well, actually, let's start off with the level 4s for now. So we have Rocky, Brothers, and Pedor. So the way the Spriggans work is that all of them across the board share the same ability where they can attach themselves to a Spriggans Xyz monster as material if they're in the hand, field, or the graveyard. Now, all three of these guys share that same effect across the board, which means that as long as you have a Spriggans Xyz monster on field, you can attach any of these cards to that Xyz monster as material, whether they're in your hand, the field, or the graveyard, which is pretty cool. So you're constantly loading materials underneath your Spriggans boss monsters, which is pretty nice. Now, they all do have their own individual effects. Pedor can tribute himself on field to target a Spriggans monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Brothers, if he's sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, can target a Spriggans monster in the grave except himself and special summon it. And then Rocky, if he's normal or special summoned, he can target a Spriggans monster in the grave or a Great Sand Sea Gold Golgonda, which is their field spell and we'll get into later, that's in the graveyard and added to the hand. So these cards do give you a really interesting resource game. Spriggans is a deck that, their first turn board isn't that impressive. However, their turn 3 board is, which is kind of interesting, and these cards really do set you up for the long game. So again, just for ratios, we're running 1 Pedor, 3 Brothers, and 3 Rocky, respectively. Now we're going to move into their level 8 monsters, which is 2 copies of Branga and 2 copies of Spriggans Captain Sargus. Now, Branga and Sargus do share the same ability that the level 4s have, where they can attach themselves to a Spriggans Xyz from anywhere, whether they're in the hand, the field, or the graveyard. Branga has his own individual effect where he can banish himself and another Spriggans monster from grave to add a Spriggans card from deck to hand, which is pretty cool. And Captain Sargus, in my opinion, is one of the more interesting ones, where if he's on the field during the opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can detach a material from any Xyz monster you control to target a face-up card on the field and destroy it. Additionally, if Sargus is attached as a material to a Spriggans Xyz, he gives that Spriggans Xyz an additional 500 attack. So Sargus is actually really, really nice in terms of if you have Sargus on the board with any Xyz monster next to him, you can, on the opponent's turn, detach materials from that card to blow up cards in the field as a quick effect, which I think is really cool and something that isn't I would say, done by other archetypes. Even Xyz archetypes, don't have cards like that. And then to round off the level 8s, we are playing 2 copies of the Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golganda. This is just another level 8 monster. If Great Sand Sea Gold Golganda, which again is their field spell, is on the field, this card's original attack becomes 3,000. And then also, if this card is in the hand or the graveyard, if you control a face-up card in the field zone, you get to special summon the serpent from the hand or grave. But you banish it if it leaves the field. And then, if the Great Sand Sea of Gold Golganda on the field would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish a monster from your graveyard instead. So he offers protection for their field spell, can summon himself out from the hand or graveyard if the field spell's on board as a free 3,000 beat stick. And the banishing part doesn't really come up that much because you're usually going to overlay this into a rank 8, and that'll prevent it from being banished when you detach the material, which is kind of cool. So just an additional extender and another level 8 body to help facilitate some rank 8 plays. And that rounds out the Spriggans monster lineup. Spriggans are, like I said, are pretty interesting. They're fire machines, and they focus on just attaching themselves to their boss monsters as material, which is really cool. And we'll get into what their boss monsters do a bit later. But for now, let's dive into the Suship side of the deck, or Gunkan, I should say. We are playing triple copies of Gunkan Suship Shari. This is their vanilla monster. This is the card that you always want to see, and you usually want to use to make their Xyz boss monsters with. And then we are also playing the 3 copies of Gunkan Suship Ikura as well. Ikura is kind of nice. If you control Shari, he can special summon himself from the hand, which is interesting. And then also, once per turn, during the main phase, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck. And if you do, you can either add to your hand or special summon an excavated Shari, which is pretty nice. However, if you didn't excavate any Sharis, then you just shuffle the rest of your cards back into the deck. So it's kind of nice if you have Shari and Ikura, you summon Shari, special the Ikura, and you have a free rank 4 right there. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. They will be getting more support in the next main booster set, Burst of Destiny. And when that happens, they really, really pop off, I feel, because they get some pretty cool cards. But for right now, we're just playing the 3 Shari and the 3 Ikura, and it actually works out pretty well with the Spriggans engine, since, like I said, the Spriggans don't really require their normal summon to do anything. You can save the normal summon for a card like Shari, and even at the end of the day, it's still a 2,000 attack vanilla beat stick, which is kind of hilarious, beating your opponent down with a big rice ship. But anyway, for the last main deck monster, we are just deciding to play triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This is just your overall, catch-all hand trap of the format. You're able to hit any search cards or anything that would try and special from deck. Ash is just a really great card to shut down most of your opponent's plays. I personally feel like Ash is not that great early game, but late game, she could usually end turns if your opponent's really relying on cards to do things. With that being said, though, let's move into the spells. This is their field spell. We're playing 3 copies of the Great Sand Sea Gold Golganda. Its effect is that all Spriggans Xyz monsters on field gain 1,000 attack, which is a pretty nice boost. And then also, if you control no Spriggans Xyz monsters, you can discard a Spriggans card, so that's either monster, spell, or trap, to special summon a Spriggans Xyz from your extra deck. So this is how the Spriggans kind of cheat out their boss monsters. As long as you have the field spell on board, you can discard any Spriggans card to just special summon one of these Spriggans Xyzs from the extra deck. And the only restriction is that you have to control no Spriggans Xyz. You can control anything else that you want on field, but if you don't control a Spriggans Xyz, you're able to use this effect. And it's really cool because the Spriggans boss monsters have some pretty interesting effects. Additionally to that, if any face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can target one monster the opponent controls, and it cannot attack for the rest of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. So the Spriggans boss monsters kind of have this Time Thief Redoer-esque effect, where they can quick effect tag out and banish themselves until the end phase, which triggers the field spell to target something and prevent it from attacking, which is kind of nice. So 3 copies of the field spell is obviously mandatory. Then we are playing triple copies of Spriggans Watch. Watch, I have to say, is probably one of the best archetypal spells I've ever seen in recent history. Pretty much, if you don't control the field spell, the Great Sand Sea, on activation, Spriggans Watch lets you add from the deck to your hand a copy of it. So if you don't have the field spell already, Watch is pretty much your in-archetype terraforming. However, if you do have the field spell already, then Watch lets you add a Spriggans monster from deck to hand, and if you do, you get to send a Spriggans monster from your deck to the graveyard. So if you already have the field spell, it actually becomes a Rhoda and a Foolish Burial all in one card. It's kind of wild how good this card actually is. And I like the fact that it has a different effect if you control the field spell already, because some archetypes have cards that search field spells, and if you already have the field spell, then those cards that search the field spell are kind of redundant. It's nice that if you have the field spell and Watch becomes something really, really great entirely. And again, if you don't have the field spell, then it's a terraforming for it, which is pretty cool. So 3 copies of Watch, I think, is the best spell card that the Spriggans has in their theme. Then we're playing triple copies of Booty. Booty is their continuous spell. Basically, if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, you can target an effect monster the opponent controls, and neither player can activate that effect monster's effects on field this turn. So it's kind of like an effect veiler, which is pretty nice if an Xyz leaves the field. Keep in mind that the Spriggans boss monsters do have quick effects that let them banish themselves, and that is treated as an Xyz leaving the field by a card effect. So you're able to trigger like Booty's on-field effect as well as Golgonda's on-field effect to target something and prevent it from attacking. So you can like Battle Fade a card and also Effect Veil a card with the spells, which is kind of nice. Additionally, Booty also functions as 3 more copies of the field spell, because if Booty's on the field, you can send Booty to the graveyard to activate, you don't add, you activate, a Great Sand Sea Gold Golgonda directly from the deck or the graveyard. So you're playing 3 Gold Golgonda, 3 Watch, and 3 Booty. So effectively you have 9 ways to access the field spell. And Booty even recycles from graveyard, which is cool too. So 3 copies of that. It's overall really, really good card. And the Spriggans monster Branga can search it as well. Then because we're playing a couple of level 8s, we have 6 in total. We're playing 2 copies of Trade-In, just because you don't, want a brick necessarily, and you don't mind the Spriggans monsters being in the graveyard since they can reattach themselves to an Xyz as material anyway. So 2 copies of Trade-In I felt was perfect. Being able to just ditch one of your level 8s to draw 2 cards is really, really cool. Moving on, we are playing the Holy Trinity here. 1 Duster, 1 Raigeki, and 1 Monster Reborn. I just felt that these are really, really good generic spells. Duster being able to blow out back row, Raigeki being able to blow out front row, and Monster Reborn just being a free extender for anybody in either player's grave to continue with your Xyz plays. Really, really cool overall. Kind of sucks that all these cards are limited, but then again, I do understand why, because in my opinion, they're probably some of the strongest spells the game has to offer. Then we're playing the 1 Pot of Avarice, just because as the game continues on, we do wind up with a lot of material and resources in the graveyard that we would like to shuffle, put back, and, just get free advantage off of. You do Xyz summon and Xyz climb quite a bit in this deck. So when those materials go to the graveyard, you're able to just shuffle them back to the extra and draw 2 cards. So 1 Pot of Avarice I felt was really, really good to help with those grind games. Then we're playing the 1 Xyz Import. This is just a quick effect removal of sorts. You target an Xyz monster you control, and any monster your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to the Xyz you targeted, and then attach that opponent's monster to your Xyz monster as material. So it targets, but it gets rid of the threat without destroying it, which is really, really cool. And just being able to steal the monster as well. Like, it doesn't go to the graveyard, it just gets stacked under an Xyz as material. It's pretty funny, and a really great card overall. Then, moving on to the traps, we are playing 2 copies of Spriggans Blast. This is like an in-archetype infinite impermanence of sorts. Pretty much if you control a Spriggans monster, keep in mind it doesn't have to be an Xyz monster. You get to choose, not target, you choose an opponent's main monster zone. If a monster is face up in that zone, during this turn it cannot attack directly. Also, its effects are negated. Let me explain this again. You don't target any monster. You choose a zone that the monster's in. And if there's a monster in that zone, that target's effects become negated. This is an insane card that I think is kind of slept on within the archetype. This pretty much negates almost any card on field without targeting it. This can literally negate a Dragoon and make it so that Dragoon can now be targeted and destroyed, since you'd be negating its effects since it's in that zone that you targeted. This card is really, really cool, and it's searchable. And it's kind of like really cheeky how it actually works. Additionally, if there wasn't a monster in the zone that you chose, then that zone cannot be used this turn. So if you chose a zone and there was nothing in it, then you basically shut off that zone for the remainder of the turn. which is also pretty cool. It has an additional effect as well, where if you control a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz as material, you can choose 2 zones instead. Spriggans do have an in-archetype fusion that uses Fallen of Albaz, as material. However, it's not that easy to get summoned to the field, and to be honest, in my personal opinion, the on-field effects are kind of lackluster and kind of defeat the point of the hoops you have to jump through to get it on board in the first place, so we don't actually run it. But overall, Spriggans Blast is cool just as a 2-of. Just to have non-targeting negation on hand is nice. Then we play the 1 Spriggans Interluder, which is brand new from Dawn of Majesty. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you can return a Spriggans Xyz you control to the extra deck and apply one of these effects. You can either negate that activated effect, which turns your Spriggans Xyz monsters into Omni-Negations, since you can stop any card or effect that would activate, or you can special summon a level 8 monster from the grave. So it also becomes like a monster reborn for your bigger Spriggans bodies. And then additionally, if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, you can make all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls lose 1,000 attack until the end of this turn, even if the Interluder leaves. So it's a really good card overall, just as a 1-of, being able to turn your Xyz monsters into Omni-Negates or pseudo monster reborns. And then for the last card in the main deck, we are playing the 1 Spriggans, the 1 Barrage Blast. It's just a continuous trap, allowing you to detach any number of materials from machine Xyz monsters you control to target that many cards in the field and destroy them. So it gives your Spriggans monsters, or Xyz monsters, like removal on the opponent's turn, which is kind of interesting, since you can just detach the materials to blow stuff up, and then the Spriggans monsters can reattach themselves to the boss monster next turn anyway, so you don't really lose out on advantage. So this is a really cool card to have as a 1-of, and then it also has a graveyard effect, where if a machine Xyz monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this card's in the grave, you can banish this card in a machine Xyz from the graveyard to burn your opponent, equal to the banished monster's rank times 200, which is kind of interesting. And that rounds off the main deck. Again, this is a super budget, really casual deck that I think would just be fun to play around with your friends or go to locals and try out with. It's a 42 card main. Now we're about to dive into the extra deck. We are playing the 1 Sprind, the Iron Dash Dragon. This is their in-archetype Albaz fusion, because for those of you that don't know, Spriggans is part of the Dogmatica lore. Long story short, we're never really going to be summoning this. We don't even play Albaz in the deck, so there's really no way to get this card on field. What we do use it for, though, is if it's sent to the graveyard during the end phase of the turn that it was sent, you can either add to your hand or special summon a Spriggans monster or Fallen of Albaz from your deck. So it's kind of like the Titaniclad dragon in Dogmatica, except for Spriggans. So that's pretty cool. And the way that we dump the Iron Dash Dragon to the graveyard is actually off of the Spriggans Merrymaker, which you play 2 of. This is one of the Spriggans Xyz monsters that you can cheat out of the extra deck. You could make it normally, it's just a generic level, rank 4. And if it's special summoned from the extra deck, you get to send a Spriggans monster from your deck to the graveyard. So it's on summon, it's a Foolish Burial for any Spriggans, which is pretty cool. What's nice about that is it allows you to trigger Spriggans Brothers in the graveyard. It allows you to just load up more material that you can attach from grave to the Merrymaker, which is cool. Then during your opponent's main or battle phase, quick effect, you can banish this card you control, similar to a Time Thief Redoer, and until the end phase, so it can dodge removal. And if this card had 2 or more Xyz materials attached to it when that effect was used, you can send a fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. So that's how you dump your Sprind to grave. You do it during the opponent's turn using Merrymaker's effect, which is pretty nice. So 2 Merrymaker. Then we are on 2 copies of Gunkan Suship Akura class Dreadnought. This is the Sushi Ship boss monster, generic rank 4, fire, aqua. If it's Xyz summoned, you get to apply these effects in sequence based on the materials used. So if you used Gunkan Suship Shari, you get to draw a card. And then if you also use the Gunkan Suship Akura, the Dreadnought can attack twice each battle phase. And it doesn't have to be on monsters, and it doesn't have to be in a row either, which is interesting. So 2 really good effects, just being able to draw a card on summon and then being able to attack twice is nice. And then the third effect that this card has is once per turn, when your Gunkan monster special summon from the extra deck inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target a card the opponent controls and destroy it. So if this card does deal any damage, you get to pop cards. What's interesting about the Xyz monster is that none of the effects that it has require you to detach materials, which means that the materials used to make this card are usually just stuck under it. And that's where a card like the Spriggans Captain Sargus comes into play, where as a quick effect in the opponent's turn, he can detach a material from any Xyz monster on field to pop a card on the field. So you can, if you have Sargus and Dreadnought effectively becomes quick effect removal while Sargus is on board. This is really, really cool. But moving on, we are playing one Tornado Dragon, just as a generic rank 4 to out back row. One number 41 Baguska, just as a stall control card to buy some time if needed. Then we are on the one number F0 and the one number F0 Utopic Future Dragon. This is a really cool card to make, just being immune to destruction and also being a really good monster negate, and steal as well is really, really great. This card cannot be understated, and it's not that expensive right now. So if you're interested in playing this card, I would pick it up sooner rather than later. But really cool card to make in this deck. Then we're on the one Drill Driver Vespinato. Being able to overlay this card on a rank 4 you control as material is really nice because it allows you to trigger Golgonda's effect again next turn. So like usually when your Merrymaker comes back, you control Spriggans Xyz, so you can't use Golgonda's effect to summon another one. You can just overlay the Vespinato on the Merrymaker, making it so that you no longer control Spriggans Xyz, and then you can use Golgonda's effect again to special another Spriggans from the extra deck, which is cool. So Vespinato's nice as a one-of. Then we're on the two Springans Suship X-Blower. X-Blower, in my opinion, has a really, really cool effect. Something that really hasn't been seen or done much before, where you can choose an opponent's monster zone or spell trap zone. Again, you choose a zone. You don't target any card in that zone, but you just choose a zone, and then you detach any number of materials from this card, and if you do, you destroy the same number of cards your opponent controls in the chosen zone and its adjacent monster zones and or spell trap zones. I know it's a lot of words, but long story short, if you have the X-Blower on board, and let's say you detach 4 materials, and you chose like the zone just below the extra monster zone, you would effectively pop. If you detach 4 or 5 materials, you would blow up the card in the chosen zone, and then everything else in the around zones, almost like in a plus symbol, which is really, really interesting. So the one X-Blower is nice, and it can also quick effect tag itself out during the opponent's main or battle phase, just like Merrymaker can, which is cool. Then we are playing the one Dingirsu, just because it's another form of non-target, non-destruction removal, and it's very easy to make in this deck. And you can also use its effect to solidify your field by protecting cards from destruction. Additionally, all of your Spriggans monsters are machines, and Branga does banish itself and another Spriggans to search cards from deck to hand, so you can use Dingirsu's secondary effect to attach a banished machine to this card as material, which is kind of funny as well. And then to round out the extra deck, we are on the one Doolittle Chimera, just because it's a generic rank 2, or link 2, excuse me, for fire monsters, and it gives your fire monsters a nice buff. And then also for the last card in the extra deck is one Amphibious Swarm Ship Ambler Whale. Interesting fire machine link 4, just requiring 2+ effect monsters to be made, and its effects are kind of cool. Pretty much it gains 200 attack for each link monster in the graveyards, so both players' graveyards. And then if this card gets destroyed by any means, you can target a link 3 or lower monster in either grave and special summon it. So if you use the Chimera to make this, you can actually revive the Chimera when the Ambler Whale is destroyed. And then what's nice about that interaction is that Ambler Whale's got a graveyard effect where if a link 3 or lower monster on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect while Ambler Whale's in the grave, you can banish the Ambler Whale from the graveyard to pop any card on the field non-target. So it's kind of like a little bit of a loop where you summon Chimera, use Chimera to make Ambler Whale dies, revives the Chimera, and then when the Chimera dies, you get the Chimera's grave effect to add something from grave back to hand, and then Ambler Whale can banish itself to blow up a card as well. So you end up like going plus in that exchange, which is kind of neat. But again, like I said, this deck is just designed to be a really fun, casual build, basically summoning sushi and fire machines to break boards. Let me know what you guys think of it. I do play a side deck, but again, the side deck can be your choice, whatever you want. You don't have to necessarily play what I'm playing in my side, but we'll just run through it really quickly. I'm playing triple copies of Lava Golem in my side, just because it's a really great card to out threats, and additionally, it's a level 8 monster as well, so it works with Trade-In, which you play in the main deck already, so if you clog with level 8s, you can actually use it to get some draws. Then we play triple Nibiru, the Primal Being, just because we don't like going against combo decks. And to be honest, Nibiru's kind of fallen out of favor this format, and because of that, I think you can easily catch a lot of players off guard because they wouldn't expect you to be playing it. So Nibiru's always nice. Then we're side decking triple copies of Dark Ruler no more, just because, again, we don't like going into really big, negate boards. Just turn the field off and make your Spriggans plays. We're also siding triple copies of Cosmic Cyclone, just for those hefty back row matchups. Don't want to deal with any floodgates or anything like that. And then for the last card we are playing on our side is triple copies of Evenly Matched. And that rounds out my side deck, of course, but again, tailor your side deck to your liking and whatever you can afford within your budget. But that's it for the profile, guys. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, and hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care.